Hello everyone, I'm Pawan from Dubai World Trade Center and we welcome you to the Future of Work webinar brought to you by Big Innovation Center from Saudi Arabia in partnership with Dubai World Trade Center. Big Innovation Center is an innovation consultancy helping to build great companies through technology, creativity, and innovation. The webinar is run up to the largest in-person tech show in the world right after the opening of the Dubai Expo in October 2021. We are organizing 6 major shows: the AI Everything Show, GITEX Future Stars, Marketing Mania, Future Blockchain Summit, and FinTech Surge from 17th to 21st of October at Dubai World Trade Center. Today, the essence of public-private partnerships is being able to design and develop futuristic places of work that can achieve shared prosperity. Now, the capacity buildup and appetite for technological and cultural change in work has been accelerated with the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and blockchain technologies, with data being the only currency measured for future business networking. The best opportunity for businesses to compete on a level playing platform is to reinvent work that will assure business continuity. Now, by 2030, the MENA region is set to expand its tertiary educated pool by 50% as per World Economic Forum. So creating sustainable future workplaces is an absolute necessity today, not a luxury anymore for public and private players. I would now like to draw your attention to a few housekeeping rules. As you can see at the bottom of the page, there is a question and answer function for our attendees. So please feel free to add any questions you would like to ask our panelists. You can also upvote questions at the same time. We also have a chat function at the bottom of the page. So please feel free to network and introduce yourselves by name, organization, and country or region. And feel free to add to the conversation there too. Well, it's currently set to only panelists. So just change it to panelists and attendees. We also want to make today as interactive as possible. So we are rolling out a few live interesting polls for all of you. Without any further delay, let me welcome today's moderator, Angie Lau, the award-winning global journalist and editor-in-chief of Forecast News, who joins us from Hong Kong. Hi, Angie.
Thank you so much, Pawan. It's an honor to help moderate today's discussion, AI and the Future of Work in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. At Forecast News, we cover the emerging technologies that shape our world. And when it comes to AI or artificial intelligence, there's no doubt that it's not only shaping our world, it is also disrupting the workforce. So in this next hour, we're going to dive a little bit more deeply and look at everything from automation to new business models and the impact it will have on the future of work. So is everyone ready? Let me introduce our esteemed panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Zahra Al-Rawahi, CEO and founder of AI Academy in Oman, a champion of innovation, fourth industrial revolution technologies, e-learning, e-assessment, adaptive system, and intelligent tutoring systems, ITS. We also welcome Dr. Jassim Haji, President, Artificial Intelligence Society from Bahrain, winner of 43 top Middle Eastern technology awards, including 6 CIO Distinguished Awards, driving responsible AI initiatives for social empowerment. And finally, Dr. Sakhar Arkrev, AI scientist, Saudi National Center for AI from Saudi Arabia. Dr. Sakhar specializes in natural language processing. This is NLP, and focuses on the social network-based models for text classification and graph neural networks. So by all measure, our 3 esteemed panelists are more than well-versed to help us understand the future a little bit better. But before I get to the panelists, I want to get to know you a little bit better. In fact, we all do. This conversation is really for you, our attendees. And so we want to poll you, our audience, get to know you a little bit better. And so welcome to our first poll, very interactive here. Tell us, which sector are you from? Take a look at the list. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to pick which label fits you best. Are you a CXO, director, VP level, engineering operations maintenance, production IT, maybe it's IT related functions, marketing, advertising, maybe industrial, others? All right, if you're ready, let's see what everyone had to say, and it helps us also understand it better. So let's see what the poll had to say. Wow, okay, so there's a good mix of you, but certainly 30% and 31%, most of you come from the CXO director VP level, and then also the IT level as well. So thank you, everyone. It gives us a really good sense of how to shape this conversation. So let me start with the first theme, which is today's data, tomorrow's analytics. So what do I mean by that? We are drowning in a sea of data. There is so much data that we personally create, and then professionally all around the world every day, exabytes times a million are likely being created. But how do we assess today's data? And with the application of AI tools, create and develop and understand tomorrow's analytics. So Dr. Skara, I'd love to start with you. What do you believe is the most valuable data set that, in your view, that you value most today? What insights can you share from Oman, especially from your perspective as you're helping shape education and skill sets for today's children embarking on a future that has yet to be determined?
Good afternoon, all of you. I totally agree with you, and thank you very much for letting me participating on this event. The data is so important. So the value of the data is unquestionable at all, actually. And if we read the economists, most of them now, they claim the data is the oil of the future. The importance of the data is equivalent to the importance of the oil of these days. According to my belief regarding the importance of data set, the most valuable one is the data set that associated with providing benefits to the society as well the economy. So whatever data that provide, the utilization of this data that provide beneficial value for the society and for the economy, that the data, a great data actually, according to my own definitions. And I saw actually most of the nation and organization are focusing actually in acquiring this type of data, as well utilizing this data in making the business model of their companies, organization, etc. In Oman, the good thing that the utilization of the data is in creating the vision of Oman 2040, which utilize massive amount of data, the international data, national data, as well insight from the individuals, insight from people or group of people, academia, from the industry, from the schools. We get the insights from them to create the vision of Oman 2040. So this vision was driven by data in order to shape the plans for Oman to be one of the greatest country by the year of 2040. And we pay more attention actually here in Oman in skilling the workforce, skilling like in my area related to, I was managing a number of projects related to education and innovation, to creating number of technology transfer offices within different universities and institutes. As well, the government itself, they initiated number of government funds such as technology investment fund, where they invest on the youth to boost their creativity and the innovative ideas to reach the market.
Right. And it really sounds that it's data-driven decision making, and that's really important. Dr. Jassim, I want to bring you in here. We heard how Oman is reviewing data, and from your point of view, how can companies as well think about investing in AI to decipher the data goldmine that could change and reshape their businesses? Can you give us an example of what you're doing in Bahrain?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The data and the history of data is very important for us in Bahrain. We started several years ago, even without the absence of AI, to put data together because that was used for other analytical uses, for the business and intelligence, for instance. Business intelligence was way before the AI. Now, Bahrain is refocusing itself. Bahrain had, believe it or not, the first computing in place in this oil refinery in 1940. This is when my friend on the line, Gary, was born. But this is the history. Now, first, we're building a new city called His Highness Sheikh Nasser's Research and Development, and it's Sheikh Nasser's Technology and Science Park, where we're trying to bring the multinational companies in under one umbrella and act as an R&D for the Middle East. What is missing in the Middle East is, honestly, we do not have a development happening on AI and other multinational companies within the GCC or within the Middle East. It's all done outside the Middle East, you know, whether there is a top 5 or others. So this is something that we try to focus on. Probably later in the conversation, I'll bring it. Well, why is it more important? Why is it more important for the GCC nationals to be engaged in that, understanding the culture, the requirements of the companies within the GCC, and how can they be customized?
That makes a lot of sense. Dr. Sakhar, I want to bring you in here as well. You know, we got a sense from Oman and Bahrain as they assess data. What's the lay of the land in Saudi Arabia, especially from your point of view, using NLP? Does this inform culture, communication beyond language? How are you thinking about data from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, actually, the kingdom yesterday just announced that they established a new authority to develop the R&D and innovation sector in the kingdom, which is good news. And 2 years ago, the kingdom established an authority for AI named Sadaya. It's for AI and data management in the kingdom to make data more accessible, to make some regulations regarding using artificial intelligence. And in fact, artificial intelligence in the kingdom is not a new topic. There has been a lot of work in the kingdom since 1980s, especially for language technologies to develop Arabic natural language processing technologies. And yeah, regarding the second part, how do we think about data from NLP perspective? In fact, 80% of the available information is unstructured text with a variety of language usage, different dialects, different writing styles. And from point of view in NLP, it's sometimes complete mess if you look at the data set like that, especially if you have a very specific application. Something like if you want to do sentiment analysis for your product on social media, you need first to find the most useful data set. And sometimes you want to label this data set to say, okay, this is positive, this is not a negative. And yeah, both things are extremely difficult sometimes. You need to hire someone who knows the culture, who knows the context, etc. Think about something like Rosetta Stone in ancient Egypt.
Yes.
It was, yeah, it's even though it's a small object, but it was extremely helpful to understand the Egyptian culture. Although archaeologists have been working on the Egyptian culture for a couple of years, but not until they found the Rosetta Stone and be able to translate from Greek to ancient Egypt to understand the Egyptian culture.
That's a great example of how AI technology can be the modern day Rosetta Stone.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking about the good data set as the Rosetta Stone. It's extremely difficult to find a very helpful data set.
Well, you know, you language transcends, you know, simple written text. It is also about, you know, culture and, to your point, sentiment. You know, what one society regards as valuable, somebody else, you know, might use the same language or might use the same words, but infer a completely different understanding.
Exactly.
So let's get to our audience for a second poll here. In your view, audience, according to you, we heard from our panelists, but according to you, what do you think is the top challenge in implementing future of work models? Is it transforming and cultivating company culture? And you'll see that poll on your screen right now. Is it engaging a remote workforce? Is it measuring KPIs? Is it lack of knowledge on how to leverage emerging technologies like AI, machine learning, quantum information science, IoT? Or do you think, hey, no challenges at all, I'm cool with everything? Or is there something else that we haven't listed? I think with this conversation, what we absolutely heard is that there are just a lot of different aspects to the future of work. We heard that data, as it's helping shape policy initiatives from Oman. We heard from Dr. Jassim how how data is also being integrated and being thought about from a corporate and enterprise perspective. And then even in NLP with Dr. Sakhar, just trying to understand how with AI and NLP, how we can actually learn to understand each other a little bit better. And maybe that really helps evolve a future workforce. So let's see what most of you said. 48% feel that the top challenge in implementing the future of work models is lack of knowledge on how to leverage emerging technologies like AI, machine learning, quantum, which is perfect because this is what we're here for. So let's talk about that. Okay, panelists, let's answer that directly. There's a lack of understanding, which means a lack of confidence and conviction as to how to utilize AI when it comes to our greatest resource, which is our humans, our human resources management. Let me talk to Dr. Sahra first. You know, when you are teaching and you think about education, Dr. Sahra, how do we teach a future workforce that will be working with AI tools to utilize it for a workforce in the future? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, we all agree actually that automation will have a great impact on shaping the work and as well on the employment status as well. But we have to be positive in it. We shouldn't look on the backside of it only. We should look at the work that will be generated from the AI. So actually, we believe AI will create more jobs than what it eliminate. It will help actually to invent new type of jobs. As well, it will empower the existing one. The existing employee will be empowered with the new skill that needed for the AI. It may create a new entrepreneur that bring new totally things to the market. So the contribution of AI will be huge, and the need for reskilling and upskilling of the workforce is one of the most important things. As the poll show, the most important is to pay more attention to build the capacity of individuals. The people who will be working on this field of AI, are they able to do, even though the job of the future, most of them are not known until now, according to World Economic Forums and other researchers. They believe most of the work of the future, around 85% of the work of the future, are unknown. So we need to pay more attention for the young generation, to build them with the critical skills, as well creativity, problem solving. We need them to take them to the real world, to see what are the problems of the real world, how they can invent solutions. So they will be equipped with the tool that needed for the future. As well, we shouldn't forget IT literacy, not just IT literacy, but
Yeah.
as well programming. The basic
Yeah.
programming, they need to have it. Programming languages, the way of communicating between themselves and the tools as well, because they will be working with, robotic systems, and these robotic systems, how they can communicate with the robots,
That's right. That's
etc.
right. That's right.
So it will be the way of working between human and machine, equal to equal, side by side. So we need to understand, and the workforce of the future need to be aware how to communicate with the new agents that they are working with it.
Right.
And
And so that's the future. That's the next generation. Dr. Jassim, I want to bring you in here. How can businesses utilize AI today? There's a lot of capital that actually companies are a little bit hesitant to invest in. So can you share examples of how AI can be used to adapt modern workforce management? And how are you seeing companies that have invested in AI actually glean from the R&D investments that they've already put in to create efficiencies and productivity that you're seeing today, Dr. Jassim?
I think the biggest challenge is answering that question in 2 minutes. But there's a lot to do. But look, the expectations before pandemic was just in GCC, there will be by 2030 around 320 billion spent in AI. There are different views that this will be reduced or increased, and I think that the understanding of the needs of the AI in the organization, it should increase. There shouldn't be a perception by the management of the companies that AI is another form of technology and it's just an automation, and that's where everybody gets it wrong. It is not just a technology, as the doctors explained before me. The data science is an important and integral part of it. Is the algorithms that comes with it, and how you get the algorithms right. You don't get the biased algorithms because you're going to repeat the same things and errors which are more than humans. But I believe in areas that have suffered in the pandemic, mostly those are the more successful areas, like the healthcare and testing of the vaccines that happens in US, in the banking sector, where we're going to see more and more of the physical banks disappearing, and we're going to see more of the virtual banks, which are based on the AI, will rise and flourish. And we see Australia and India and Russia, other parts of the world, up to 8% of the banks have already converted into virtual banks with no staffing. So I think the organizations have shown already examples of the success of the AI. Probably the expenditure in that area is still questionable because of the return on investment that is expected in the short period, but it will take a bit longer to see the prices drop once there are more implementations and see the future of AI in the organizations, I believe. And the private sector mainly will result more than public sector and most of the GCC, although the expenditure in GCC and the public sector is more than the private.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there. It can't just come from one sector. Can't just be the private sector. It can't just be the public sector. It must be a concerted effort. And that's where we see innovation really accelerate in different parts of the world when we do see that partnership. Dr. Sakhar, I want to bring you in here. You're working in a very interesting field, AI-enabled NLP. What does that mean for the future? A lot of people attending right now, they want to understand, hey, how can AI-enabled workforce actually help me do my business better? But look, when you have an international team and they all understand each other, even if they don't speak the same language with AI-enabled NLP, that could be potentially very interesting. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, actually, I'm first quoting the American journalist Flora Lewis. Learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. It's not only about knowing words from different languages, but also how different cultures and different groups use the words in different meanings. As you mentioned before, maybe one word in one culture is completely different than another culture. That's, yeah, I mean, for NLP, it's extremely difficult to get into the semantics of these words, especially when people talk about metaphors. Take, for example, the word like moon and in Arabic, it's associated with beauty, while in Japanese is maybe associated with love. So yeah, first of all, developing some NLP-enabled or AI-enabled technologies to understand the semantics is crucial to do such things. But yeah, and we have made a lot of progress, maybe in the last couple of years, regarding extracting semantics from different cultures, different languages. Probably people might have heard about the GPT, BERT, etc., the language models that have been developed in last couple of years that can enable us to not just to capture words by themselves, but to capture the meanings of them in different contexts.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's
Yeah.
got to be, I mean, that is really the next phase. And
Yeah.
we're just in the first, you know, to use a baseball metaphor, we are in the first inning. So I'm showing my cultural nuances here. But certainly, you know, one day these metaphors can be more universally understood. Let's tap our audience once again. And this is great. I'm seeing that the questions are building up as well in the Q&A. So don't forget, just put your questions in the Q&A. That's where we're going to be collecting the questions, and feel free to upvote. And that's where we're going to start taking questions from our audience in a couple of minutes. But here's a question for you, audience. What will most impact customer and employee experiences in your view? Is it developing the next level of digital workers, deconstruct and reconstruct experiences with remote working models? My goodness, that is definitely what we're experiencing right now in COVID. Is it cybersecurity of digital experiences? And yes, we are also hearing cybersecurity is a vulnerability that we all need to address. Or is it others? So what, in your view, audience, what will most impact the customer and employee experiences? So just lock in your answers and let's see how most of you voted. It really is a very oh, there you go. Yeah, a lot of you agree with what we've all experienced since late 2019 into 2020, deconstruct and reconstruct experiences with remote working models. And this is a perfect way to segue into our next theme of how will AI transform the workplace? We have all experienced, for our panelists, you know, we have all experienced COVID-19. It has really transformed the workplace already. We have all been forced to adapt. So how do we use technology tools? And Dr. Sarah, what do you think are the most important skills that we've learned that we need to brush up on, that we're missing when COVID really exposed a lot of the vulnerabilities? In your view, what do you think are the most important skills that students need to learn today in order to be prepared for the future? What are we all learning as a result of COVID?
As a result of COVID, actually, I really believe on the importance of innovation. Innovation, I think it is the key now on the current day for competitiveness, growth, and development as well. And since we are moving toward knowledge-based economy, and the COVID-19 assured that we are really moving toward knowledge-based economy, innovation, research, and development are the milestone for the knowledge-based economy. hired a skillful workforce of the future, a skillful individual with the right technical skills and the right ability to solve the problems needed. In Oman, 70% of population are the youth. And youth are the cornerstone of development, actually. So it becomes very essential for us to empower our youth with the right skill for the future and the right skill for them to be innovative. And such as, yeah. So the critical thinking and problem solving, I think they are the most probable future skills that needed in the future and all the time. So we need to empower our students through project-based learning. Instead of deductive type of teaching, we should move it toward a problem-based learning. Students should be focused either at higher education institute or schools level, a dedicated time to be to projects. As well, education system need to be award the people who are bringing innovative ideas within these in doing these projects. They need to collaborate with each other, not nationally, but internationally, because we are living in the global world. So global collaboration is needed. So effective way of communication as well is very important. We need to build among the youngest the curiosity toward science and technology. So the science and technology to be part of them. They are so curious to take part and to develop new tools that would help the nations. As well, the other thing, as I mentioned it earlier, the basic programming skills and digital literacy, these are the must. All the 25th century skills are needed. In addition to this, the entrepreneurial skills. The jobs of, we need, the future generation to be able by themselves to generate new ideas, new market, not to wait for the governments or to certain organization to hire them. We want them to be able to hire their friends. So the entrepreneurship mindset is needed for the future.
Yeah, and that's just really great direction, not only for you know, the students of the future or the students of the today and the workforce of the future. It is also super important to hear that, you know, these are actually skill sets that we need today: problem solving, how to work with international teams. This is absolutely a must when it comes to remote workforces, especially under COVID, when teams are international, they're decentralized, they're distributed, and they're all working from home. So how do you get comfortable doing that? Teaching the students of tomorrow how to do that, and certainly brushing up on those skills. Dr. Jassim, if I may, you know, how do you think, Dr. Jassim, if you're there, or maybe, you know what, I think Dr. Jassim, you know, let me go straight to Dr. Sakar here.
Yeah.
Dr. Sakar, how will NLP transform the workplace in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think it's already replacing people?
Yeah, actually, AI does not aim to replace people, just aim to make them more efficient, to work on the more human things. And think about the 2 examples, the bank tellers versus travel agents. We still have bank tellers, even though we have ATMs. So yeah, ATMs did not actually replace people. It just made them more efficient. So yeah, I'm thinking about AI technologies like any tool, track, telescope, X-ray, whatever. So if you work in a single task or few tasks, there's a high chance that you'll be replaced by AI technology. However, we don't want to, replace like whole job like secretary by NLP agents, but we want to make them more efficient. Think about something like Grammarly nowadays. It helps you to improve your writing, to make it, to make the writing experience more interesting, to focus more on the ideas rather than how to structure the sentence, how to choose some words. So yeah, it doesn't aim to replace you as a human and to write the whole email or whatever for you. There are some technologies like chatbots or conversational agents. They have evolved in like the last 10 years, and they are being used in customer service, for instance, but they are not there to replace customer service agents, but to make them focusing on, more important things. Rather than answering predefined questions, you can make the bot doing this job, and the customer agent a customer service agent can focus on more interesting parts, such as how to improve the customer experience, what types of complaints usually customers are talking about. So yeah, basically we'll see some improvement in like chatbots, for instance. It will be more human in terms of responses, but I don't think that they will replace humans completely. Yeah.
Well, I hope not. I'm speaking for I'm sure all of us.
It just will amplify our ability to to work more efficiently.
Yeah. Dr. Jassim, I wonder, when it comes to companies thinking about investing right now into advanced AI and other technologies, how should they be thinking about it? Is it about replacing or amplifying human resources, the human workers, or is it something else?
Well, I have a different views than Dr. From the private sector, which I worked for many years. The private sectors and the companies are not charities. So they're not going to spend on an expensive technology or expensive solutions like an AI to run human with machines in parallel, to just help humans to be lazier and help them think for it. So no, I think the aim, and unfortunately, although we will lose some jobs, we'll create newer jobs. But again, that's probably can't be said nicely or politely, but some of the routine jobs, factory worker, customer services, front desk staff, those are compromising of 60 to 65% of the jobs in many of the top companies. So the aim is, or the strategy, if they can invest on bringing technologies, as my colleague says, of the chatbots, of the RPA, automating all the back-end office works like the accountants, the HR specialists, etc., then probably the companies can focus more on the strategies, on their core business, and thinking of the new ideas to prosper rather than doing the activities this is not their core business, or they can be done more effectively, accurately, and efficiently, faster, around the clock by machines. So again, I'll go back and say, as it is, the AI is not going to work out cheap. It depending on the number of, for instance, if you talk about the chatbots, it depends on the number of bots that you require, the number of the calls, and how deep you want to go. Is that a Q&A conversation, or is it conversational that I speak to yourself, Angie? And so that's more effective, and then it will have more authorities to communicate with them. And as I mentioned earlier, with the banks that are going more virtually, it's more evidence of going virtual without branches. And, it's not about the human, it's just all to do with the facilities completely.
Yeah. Well, audience, what do you think? I mean, we heard a great expanse of perspectives from our panelists. Our fourth poll, how prepared are you digitally to embrace the new work culture? Are you well prepared? Are you somewhat prepared? Are you not prepared at all? And I think it's one of those questions that I think, we have to be intellectually honest about answering. So let's see what all of you feel when it comes to really even just the challenges of COVID and digital transformation in the workplace. And let's lock in your answers right now, and let's see what most of you answered, whether or not you are digitally prepared to embrace the new work culture. Somewhat prepared. I think that's fair. Somewhat prepared in that we know enough to start, but we don't know enough to be 100% confident. I think that is exactly what our next Q&A. Let's just open it up for our audience to ask our panelists. I'm going to go into our Q&A section right now, and I've noted that a lot of you have upvoted some questions. So in the order of your upvote, I'll ask. Okay, our first question to panelists: how will markets like crypto behave when traders stack AI tech against each other? Well, that's almost what we're seeing in the markets, whether or not it's crypto or not, with quant and algos. But what are your thoughts in terms of just AI, as we see the markets behave? Do you think that AI can influence markets, can influence behavior? What are your thoughts, panelists?
I'll start saying that now the cryptos, when we started from 2, and still there are less than 10 which are credible, but moved to more than 8,000 today, and the market is very volatile. But the whole the digitalization affected, and I think AI will not help in stabilizing, and with the changes, it will make it more volatile.
I think we should focus more toward policy and regulations, either for the fintech area and AI. Both of them, they need policy and regulations to be set, to be clear. And as well, we need creativity in developing those policies and regulations to imagine what the scenario, various scenarios that might be happen, and what proper policy and regulation will be good for it.
Makes a lot of sense. Next question here. Oh, the next question from Harish: how can the issue of accountability and responsibility be addressed for decisions made with the help of AI? That's a great one. If it's AI enabled, but at the end of the day, what if it's wrong? Who's accountable? Is it the technology, or ultimately the decision maker who's the human?
This is one of the ability that we need to create with the workforce of the future, the ability to make proper decisions, to review the analytics, and to be very critical on it, to see, is it really giving the right path? And if an AI system or algorithm it is biased in one way or another, the human should be able to detect that and to take a proper action according to the analytic. So we shouldn't be run by the AI automation blindly. We should be aware. So because of that, we need creativity, we need critical thinking and critical analytic as a major skills of the future.
Yeah, I think bias is an extremely challenging thing in AI, especially if the data itself that has been trained on is itself biased. Think about an example of a candidate resume screening system that has been trained on biased data set. And if someone from the HR department says, okay, this is the system that says this guy or this candidate is not does not fit this job because just the AI agent, we can't just say that. We have to make sure that the AI-enabled technologies are not biased. It's not an easy task to do so, especially that AI nowadays, it's like black box. You don't know what's going inside. Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's great. So it goes back to accountability.
Exactly.
You know, and we've heard that. I think it was Steve Wozniak and his wife that criticized Apple's one of the credit functions that you know it's a husband and wife, they have shared wealth, except he got the credit and she did not. And it was, you know, and Apple blamed AI, I believe, and then had to go back in the black box and figure it out. So ultimately, this is, you know, these are examples of where technology might have gotten us into trouble. How do we work to prevent that, and or what are the things that we need to do to ensure that these things don't happen? Bias, as you said.
Yeah, first of all, to make sure that actually it depends on your application. It's not, there's no single solution for everything, but you need experts from the field. As I mentioned, something like HR. If you are reviewing resumes, do you want an AI agent that just by looking at the name itself can tell, oh, this candidate is is more fit than other one? Yeah, if they have different origins or whatever. So making sure that the data itself is not biased. Sometimes this is not an easy thing to do. It's extremely difficult. I think someone mentioned the Coded Bias movie. I don't want to give spoiler here, but I encourage you to watch the movie.
I'm going to ask another question. This is from Ali. How can we better leverage AI for any future unexpected scenarios? Because we have been chock full of unexpected scenarios since 2020. This is a great question, but how can AI actually serve in helping us be prepared for unforeseen circumstances in the future?
Can I give you an
Dr.
example of?
Jassim, yeah.
Yeah, can I give you an example of what happened during the pandemic and why AI wasn't helpful? Because I think it goes all back to the commercial minds, because there is a huge investment that you need to do in AI, and mainly it's done by, as you said earlier, private sectors and certain countries and security or defense in the past. So sectors like health and education was not the priority in the past. So we're talking about the big countries leading that area. So they could have done better job in the past by just looking at the health sector and education, which are the most important. But no, there was huge investments done, for instance, in the entertainment and areas of, to be very honest, was not as important or life savings or futuristic, like what I mentioned. So, and then they got wrong-footed. But for instance, for the vaccination in the States, when they put AI in place, the period of testing of the vaccine was reduced from, I think, 2.5 years to 4 months. So that would have been much more helpful if it was done in advance and trying some of those AI facilities.
That's a great point. I mean, there's still so many more applications. It just takes foresight. I think that's a great example to show that, you know, foresight can help us at least imagine scenarios where AI can be applicable. And I think that that's a human thing that we need to figure out, and that AI can be a useful tool. Here's another question. I think this is an important question, obviously, for the 21st century. How will diversity and inclusivity be a part of the future of work? Dr. Sakhra, as students kind of embrace this, you know, it's really about brains, right? It really is about access to tools and education. And how do we think about diversity and inclusivity today so that we prepare the future of work?
Yeah, that's actually inclusiveness. That's one of the major challenges of AI, because still until now we have certain areas that are not covered with the right infrastructure for the latest technology. And those create, I mean, a major problem. And AI, as a policy of AI, we need to work further to get everyone to get the benefit of AI actually, and to be able to adapt AI different solutions. The solution of AI, I mean, they have really very benefits for education purposes. They provide adaptive type of learning. The learning they provide learning according to the pace of the student and the interaction of the student. But we need as well to prepare the learners themselves to be prepared for this type of environment, the infrastructure to be ready for them, the teachers to be able to work with this environment. To be when the teacher are able to work with this environment, they can provide the right tools for their students. So these are the major challenges that are facing AI for the future in education sector. And as well, Dr. Jassim mentioned, it won't, I mean, even though the start of AI, it was in the medical field. When the first AI invented, it was for the medical area and then for the education and for education purposes. But we saw, I mean, like the advancement of this sector, they went to other type of other sectors other than education and health. And now we can see the importance of education and health sector to embrace AI and to focus on this area as well, to look on the challenges, especially the challenges of the security issues, I mean, the data from attitudinal data from various students, how to secure this data, and as well how to empower the teacher to be the right mentor for this type of environment. And we need to promote the skill set of the old people who are working in the education sector to be equipped with the right tools and the right regulations to be able to accelerate the integration of AI in education.
Well, you know, it's integral to a global workforce, quite frankly. It's the inclusivity and diversity is so important to AI when it comes to even just NLP, everything from NLP to sentiment to you know, unconscious bias and digging that up. This next question comes from Judalyn Catalina. This is a great one. And I want all three panelists to answer this one. In your view, list the top 3 skills needed by professionals today to be ready for the future. Dr. Jassim, I start with you.
Professionals to be ready for the future.
Yeah.
In relation to AI, I presume, right?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Let me just start with the quote and then tell you how this may work. And as a quote, I believe, with an E&Y executive saying, yeah, and this applies to every other sector. And he was referring to the accountants and the auditors of the future. He said, yeah, the accountants and the auditors of the future, the traditional jobs of accountants and auditors will disappear eventually in future. But the accountants and the auditors of the future with AI enablement will prosper and will continue. So that you can apply it to any other sector, to factories, to human resources, to financial sectors. Those with knowledge, even in the medical sector, with the knowledge of AI or data science or algorithms will have jobs and will prosper and they'll be stronger. But those who will stick to their traditional skills, their jobs will disappear and they will struggle to continue functioning.
That's a great. It's an evolving your role and thinking about how AI tool can actually evolve your role. So that's something to be thoughtful about. Dr. Sahra, what do you think? Some that are top 3 skills or a top skill that is needed by a professional today for the future?
I think agility and adaptability. I mean, they need to be agile, and it matches with Dr. Jassim points actually. the workforce of the future, or the workforce of the current, they need to be really adaptable to the changing that is going to happen. They have to an agile methodology that easily they can adapt and they can learn whatever trend of the future and take the best from it with the critical thinking and the problem solving abilities. So adaptable, agility, and critical thinking, problem solving.
I like that. And what about language? When we think about NLP, Dr. Sakar, what do you think is a top skill? Should people be thoughtful about?
Yeah, I'm talking about top skills in general, not necessarily for language. Yeah, being able to adapt to a new environment. This is an extremely important thing because we live nowadays in a world that changed rapidly. Second thing is to focus on the more human skills, such as communication skills, how to convince other people, because AI is going to take a lot of tasks, a lot of tedious tasks, let's say that. So focus more on more human skills. Also to be the third skill or third type of skills is technology in general. I think professionals nowadays and near future should know basic programming, basic AI. How does AI system work? Yeah, it's not necessarily to be an AI developer, but to understand how AI works, because nowadays everyone is using computer. In 5 years, yeah, AI will be part of our daily life. So it's good to understand how they work. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump on as a communications professional, and I think language is a very important skill. And I would add patience. As it's a human trait, and I think it's one that's necessary, because as we increasingly accelerate into a universal workforce where we have colleagues that are not just sitting beside us, but are halfway around the world, sometimes cultural differences and language differences. And it's really empathy and patience. And those are skills that AI cannot necessarily replace right away.
I agree.
But I think that all of you have, I think that was a great last question from the audience that really sums it up. There is obviously a functionality to AI. It is very apparent today. And as we heard from, the educational perspective, where 85 million jobs, according to the World Economic Forum, may be displaced by a shift in the division of labor, as Dr. Jassim points out, by 2025. How do we actually educate the students of today to enter the jobs of tomorrow that don't even exist today, as Dr. Sakra very eloquently said? And, how do we speak to each other in a way that we can be aided by AI, something that Dr. Sakar is working on right now, but also how do we inject our own humanity as we address unconscious bias, as we address all of those things that need to still be overcome. And it's not just a question of technology. So I want to thank all of our panelists, Dr. Sarah, Dr. Sakar, and Dr. Jassim, for your contribution for this panel and helping us understand the future of work and the role of artificial intelligence. And those key takeaways we will take with us, no doubt. And audience, I just want to thank you as well. It was really my pleasure to moderate. And again, I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast News. Pawan, I'm going to send it back to you to wrap things up.
Wow, what an amazing webinar with some wonderful takeaways for all of us. Well, on behalf of Dubai World Trade Center and the AI Everything Show, we thank our moderator, Angie, and our panelists, Dr. Jassim, Dr. Zara, Dr. Sakar, for their wonderful insights into how the future holds for all of us. We also wish to thank Big Innovation Center from Saudi Arabia, our partner for the AI Everything Show. We look forward to welcoming you in person to the largest tech show in the world in October at Dubai World Trade Center. Thank you very much. Stay safe.